James, I believe your father described music, not just pop music, but all music, as unnecessary noise. So I'm guessing that you didn't come from the most musical of families.
Well, I don't think he's particularly musical, no. I can't think he enjoyed the outdoors and things like that. But my mother definitely was musical, and I probably owe her a great deal. She was the one who forced me to take music lessons, you know, along with academic work and sport. She thought it was well grounded and rounded to have something artistic and creative, and I couldn't draw and I couldn't paint, but music she had a grasp of, and so piano lessons, which I hated to begin with, and beyond that, you know, that kind of has pushed me to do what I do, and yeah, I probably owe her
Quite a bit. So what did, when did the lesson start, and when did your enjoyment of music start?
I think my non-enjoyment of music started first with recorder lessons, probably age 4, violin lessons, age 5, and piano lessons, aged 6. Yeah. And I really didn't enjoy the way we were taught music at school. It was great, and it was repetitive music over and over. You know, Mozart's sonata in F-sharp minor, I think I played again and again.
That's harsh at that year.
To no great standard. It was only when I got to 14 years old I saw someone playing the electric guitar, and that was much more interesting. It was playing contemporary music, and that sounded fun, and that, you know, other kids of our age would want to listen to and join in with. And he showed me a few chords, and really that was the moment that I enjoyed it myself and wanted to take music up. I'd sung all my life, and so, you know, I'd been in dodgy choirs and things like that at school. And so, you know, I knew I could sing, but that in touch with the guitar, and then the inspiration that the guitar gave me to write, all came together about when I was 14 years old.
And also with choir, it's going to be understanding what your voice can do. I'm guessing, having never been in a choir, but you know, understanding where the voice can go in your range.
Yeah, absolutely. From being, you know, a very young boy to then when your voice breaks and you know, being a tenor and realising the kind of range that I've got, and also just, you know, the practice that gives you, always using your voice and realising that you can sing. If you never have the chance to sing, a lot of people will be just too timid or nervous to ever give it a go. But that's, you know, it immediately realises in you that you can then have the confidence to do so.
Okay, so you get to 14. There's a guy at school. Was he an older kid at school? That's quite often the case with some, you know, the cool older kid with a guitar. Or was
yeah,
it just a
absolutely.
friend?
He was a year above me, an amazingly technical guitar player, really exciting to watch. And you know, as younger children, we'd go and listen to him play, and really exciting. And yeah, he was great at just saying, right, here are a few chords. And I remember going home and saying, you know, I want to play the electric guitar.
How did that go down?
I think my father, his first statement was, why the electric? Surely we can make this.
We can make this as less painful as possible.
Exactly, maybe acoustic, maybe a silent guitar. But you know, it was something I was really keen to do, and so yeah, absolutely, we went out and got myself a cheap electric guitar, and you know, a very simple amplifier. But that was the first step.
Can you remember the first song you wrote? Did that come much later, or were you writing songs in those in school days? Yeah,
what I think I'd call them probably is, rather than songs, I had lots of ideas. At the time, I would have called them songs, but as I've grown up and I've learned more about songwriting, I realised that they were incomplete. It's the spark of the idea that, you know, that is necessary to make any great song in the first place. What then goes beyond that is the knowledge of how to craft it into a well-rounded song, and that took me many years to understand, and actually meeting and working with other people who could then say, hey, have you thought about, you know, this section, changing the chords around and calling that a middle eight? Whereas, you know, as a child, if you don't know these things, how do you know what a middle eight is?
So did you learn from listening to songs you liked?
I definitely learned a great deal. I was playing as much as I could of, you know, of what I would hear from other people playing, to the old 70s bands that people were playing at school, to things that I'd hear on the radio. But also at the same time, it was giving me a great passion to write songs for myself. And the teenage years are when you have lots to say, and no real great outlet of expression. And so yeah, it was a great time for me to, you know, have those independent, individual thoughts of a teenager and express them in some way in the privacy of my own room.
Did songwriting as a living, as actually doing this, did that seem like a viable option?
Yeah, absolutely. I said within weeks of taking up the guitar, I was saying to my friends, I'm going to be a professional musician. This is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And a complete confidence in that as well.
What did they have to say about that?
I think most people said yeah whatever as a teenager you're allowed your dreams. You discuss what life will bring. I think other people who might have done music themselves at school at the same time, obviously we have a competitive nature against each other, and I'm sure I remember being told probably not.
Which can be a great spur, of course,
Definitely along the way. But I had a kind of blind confidence that I would get out and do music. Had I really known about what that entails with the music industry, I probably would have bailed out then and there. But the actual idea and belief of what music is about, the passion of music, and what it can do in its expression, how it can connect with other people. I definitely felt that, and I definitely had the confidence to think that I could connect with other people.
How about you? You're Beautiful. When did you write this song?
I can't remember the year now, but I remember the moment very clearly here in London, and I saw my then ex-girlfriend with her new man, and I literally just walked past them and had that moment of eye contact and didn't do anything about it, and I think most people can relate to that. It's it feels like the knife twisting in your stomach really when you realise that a relationship is properly over. And I went back home and wrote the words to it in under the time that I can perform the song now.
Wow.
It came incredibly fast as that spark of the idea. Again, that was for me one of those songs that was that idea. I then finished the song off with a friend of mine called Sasha Skarbeck, and I went out to Los Angeles and said, this is the song as I hear it. And he was for me a great educator in how songs should be tied up. And it took us, all of an hour and a half probably to tie those loose ends up. But yeah, it was one of those songs that it came from an initial spark of a moment of really true emotion, and the writing of the lyrics took me all of a minute and a half.
James, you mentioned that with You're Beautiful, the lyrics came first after seeing your ex-girlfriend and running home and writing the song. Is this unusual? Does normally the melody come first, or is there no particular order?
I'd say normally it's the melody that comes first for me, after maybe messing around on a piano or a guitar and get some chords. It's the music that I find captures the emotion, and then beyond that, I'll sing a tune over the top of it. As far as I know, at least with most of the other people that I've worked with, that seems to be quite a common way of doing things. And I've only met a really small handful of lyric writers first. But for me, You're Beautiful was a lyrics first song.
So what do you then do? How do you find a melody? How do you find chords to go with words as opposed to the other way around?
Well, I guess although I was writing out these words, I was almost singing them as I go, and they flow in such a simple and obvious way that in a way the tune comes from just as you read them out. It almost emotes a melody itself. And for me, I think that's when words and melody work the best, is when they do capture that. The words "You're Beautiful," if you really want to express that to someone who you can't be with, it just sounds the way I was singing it.
It sounds melodic. It sounds.
And if you say it with enough emotion of "You're beautiful," it really kind of comes out. I just feel I would sing it in that way. I guess it's the same as the Gnarls Barkley song "Crazy." When you sing that's the word out, crazy, it sort of comes out in the same way that they sang it in that song. It's just that word is said in that melodic way. Yeah,
you sing it with enough emotion, and almost the music lends itself to the emotion rather than the other way around.
Exactly, and so that song, as I say, the words came, but the natural nature of what I was saying evoked a melody, and then the loose ends we tied up just with the bit of experience and knowledge of songcraft.
One more question about You're Beautiful. What are the chords?
Not a clue.
Really? How did you find them then?
I just play them as I go. Again,
Okay.
I can read music, the theory of music, but I couldn't list the chords to you.
Really?
I'd have to pick up the guitar and show you what the chords are.
Would you write it down immediately, or would you record it? How do you capture that thing that you've got?
I barely write down what I've written, particularly with music. I really don't write it down. I just remember it. Again, the names of what it is, the chord progression seems totally irrelevant. It's just whether I can remember it. The sound of it is what I'm what I'm excited by, and if I forget it was forgettable, so probably not worth having in the first place. But if I have messed around on a piano and I have a chord structure that I really enjoy, that really captures something, then I'll remember it. I can just come back to the piano and I'll find it again.
We should talk about the time when you wrote most of the first album, Bedlam. Was this when you were in the army? Because you served in Kosovo. Were songs written during that time?
Kosovo was obviously pretty busy. As a soldier, you don't get much
Not too much.
As a soldier, you don't get much time to mess around. You're busy on operations. So in that time, I only wrote one song called "No Bravery," and again, it didn't to write. It wasn't a political song. It wasn't a thought out song. It was just one inspired by everything that I'd seen, and again, almost a kind of very natural expression of the thing that we'd witnessed. I'd written a handful of songs during my time in the army, and so from that first album, I guess 50% probably from my time in the army. It doesn't mean they're heavily influenced by my job. I was a human being with the same emotions that my other friends who had other jobs had.
At times when you were, let's say, less busy times, and you did have the period to write songs, would you sing these songs to your colleagues? Did they know what to do after you left the army?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd been telling everyone that that's what I was going to do. I think if you're with a group of soldiers, the likelihood of sitting them down and playing them "Goodbye, My Lover" is not necessarily.
I was just trying to imagine that.
Yes. So I would take other songs and change the lyrics. I perform any time and try and boost or lower morale as appropriate. So you can change any song, write about our senior officers, take the mickey out of them, and that will make everyone feel much happier. But when I was at home, of course, if I was with friends, let's say, come on then, let's hear some of these songs, and I play them then and get a feedback. Because I think you can write a song and it can feel a particular way, you can really think you've captured an emotion, but actually it's when you perform it for the first time to any number of people, probably the smaller audience the better, is when you really understand whether you're expressing it in its truest way, not even by their response, not by their reaction, but just by how you feel saying it, as to whether you really know in that moment, yeah, this is what I want to be saying, this is how I mean to say it.
What was the time period between leaving me and the whole thing really kicking off?
I signed to EMI Music Publishing about 6 months after leaving the army, and they helped me not only record my songs, they introduced me to other songwriters as well, so I could work with them and learn from them. I was already working with Sasha Skarbek, who had helped me learn how to make an idea into a well-rounded song. Another great influence was a chap called Jimmy Hogarth, who is a name that everyone knows within the music industry now, because he's one of these great talents of finding people who have these ideas, and he will basically educate them and point them in the right direction. And these two people were a great education to me.
How does that work? How does it work if you work on songs with someone else? Just take me through it a little bit. I mean, let's say with You're Beautiful, did you present them with the song and then they would suggest, okay, you've got a verse too long, there's an extra verse here, or you need a change here? How does it work?
Yeah, pretty simple things, but things that obviously my imagination, wasn't able of reaching. And again, it was with You're Beautiful and working with Sasha, it was about swapping 4 chords around there and making a middle 8. It was
a middle 8 being the section in the middle of the song.
Yes, so, verse, a chorus, a second verse, a chorus, and then we have a third section which takes it into a slightly different place. It's based around the same idea, but it's just gives it a different feel. It's that third section, and I had no idea what these things were before. You could hear it in a song, but unless someone really points out what it is, as a child, you don't necessarily know. And so it was working with those, simple ideas, and it was being educated into just thinking a slightly different way about your song, approaching it from a different angle, and seeing the possibilities of where it could go. Those were great lessons to me.
Another song from Back to Bedlam, Goodbye, My Lover. When was this written?
I wrote the song many years after the girl I was writing about, but obviously I linger on those emotions and relationships for far too long. I don't think I have any injunctions against me yet to keep me away from those people.
They just come out in songs?
Yes, exactly. But it was a long time after that. And sitting, again at the piano with and going around the chord structure and I guess it's that realisation that you'll never be with someone, but the frustration that they are still alive and out there in the world.
Possibly with someone else.
It can be an incredibly painful idea. And so I sat with the song again for quite a long time. But for me it's probably my most personal song, whereas You're Beautiful is about a moment, 1 second in time of passing that person. The song Goodbye My Lover is about a lifetime's worth of emotion, the fact that that relationship is over, but and that life continues. For me, it's the most personal song on Back to Bedlam.
It's very much a lament. That's how it seems. A kind of a lament for something that's it's almost a grieving.
I think exactly that, and I think that's probably why it came years after the relationship ended. A lot of people come up and ask me, is that person dead? And the answer is no. But as you say, I think the song's probably written in that way.
Thank you. That was beautiful.
Yeah, thanks.
It's so deeply heartfelt, so emotional, and so intimate. And then this becomes a song that a lot of people hear, and it has a life of its own. Does that feel exposing?
Well, I guess you write a song and then you put it out. What people then will make of it, how they judge it, is completely up to them, and at your own risk as well. It's you kind of know that when you put it out that it'll be judged in that way. But I've been really touched by people's response. They have said that many of them, that they feel the same way. They relate it to an aspect of their own lives. It's that honesty of the song which I think then gets people that again they can relate to it, songs are all about exposing yourself, really expressing emotion, and that's why people enjoy listening to them in the first place.
So there's no choice, really. If it's going to work, it's got to be honest. It's got to be emotional. Exactly. It's got to come from within. Exactly that.
I definitely had a debate with my record label and my management about releasing it as a single, because it feels like a too personal song to then in some way commercialise.
For you it was too personal, you mean? You didn't want to release it as a single?
Yeah, I was very nervous about that. For me, although it's my most personal song and therefore probably commercially, has lots of potential, at the same time I was very nervous about doing that, because I prefer just to have the album and do that, but record companies want to market and they want to use singles to do that, and I was nervous of overexposing it and making it, I guess, in some way meaningless by being overexposed.
Because it had so much meaning for you, because it was about this presumably very important relationship in your life.
Yeah, absolutely.
How did it feel when it did start happening on a let's face it, a pretty big scale?
Well, there was a mixture of excitement with certain things. It was giving me and the musicians I was working with a chance of going and playing live in different places, and for that we were entering a new kind of way of living in life that we dreamt of, to go and be able to play music on a day-to-day basis was great fun. At the same time, I think when the news came in that both my album and that single had hit #1, I think I felt a great sense of fear.
Fear?
Yeah, because I think there was one thing, wanting to be a musician, wanting to have an album of my own, to try and sustain that, to make further albums, and I knew that I had to have a certain audience in order for a record company to then invest to allow me to make a second album. So I thought maybe a few hundred, a few thousand people in that connection would sustain that. When you hit #1 on the charts, it's a frightening moment for me, because you realise that you'll go away from being a musician, but instead become more of accessible to the media, that they will take it away from the music and start working on the personality, and I'm not interested in saying myself as a person. I want people to relate to the songs, and for me, myself, I'm quite a private person, and so that was why it was a nervous time.
Yeah, you're talking about dealing with fame, which is
exactly
a strange thing to deal with, and also I imagine must change the songwriting process, because before you would be totally unself-conscious. Does it become harder to just write honestly without thinking that this is going to be released, and for better or for worse, a lot of people are going to hear these songs?
I think it's probably difficult for me to say whether I think too much about an audience or not. I would openly say I definitely don't. I write these songs for myself. I'm sure in the back of my mind somewhere, subconsciously, I probably do recognise that, but I would adamantly try and not think about how they might be listened to, but instead try and express myself still,
Right.
honestly. And I've done that with the second album, and I will go on and do that with the third album, as I will make it for myself. And in that way, it's got to be still honest to myself. It's got to be something that I enjoy, because when you are very old, you will have lost any CDs of mine that you may have been given freely, and the only person who will probably still have them is me, and so I've got to be, I want to still be
like them.
I want to still be happy when I'm old and grey, and that's the only probably important thing in making an album.
The second album, of which 1973, which we're going to hear in a minute, this was written. I believe you were by yourself in Ibiza for a few months. Is this right?
Actually, the initial idea, I started writing with a guy called Mark Batson, who writes for people like Dr. Dre and Eminem. So
right, slightly different, just a little bit different from your own oeuvre.
A little bit of a different approach, and we worked together for a week, and we hadn't worked with each other before. So again, it was quite a tricky situation. But he is a really very relaxed person, and we messed around in Jimi Hendrix's old studio, Electric Ladyland Studios in New York. And just had fun, actually. It was about just enjoying music and not trying to make a full song, but just mess around with musical ideas. And that's why I think that worked so well. And so, yeah, having bounced around a few musical ideas, and it was just a simple idea at that stage. I then went out to Ibiza and lived a summer and was inspired by that. And so I wrote 1973 about its most famous nightclub called Pasha, which opened in that same year, 1973. And by writing a song and getting out there, it helps me get through the door for free as well. So that was the bonus.
Can we hear it?
Yeah, of course. Well, this is one of those songs that normally I play as a band. It's definitely a groove-based song.
It's a rocker.
But so yeah, it's different to play as a duo, but fun to try.
Have you taken inspiration from any other particular singer-songwriters?
Of course, I've been influenced along the way.
Of course, yeah.
And there are a whole realm of amazing ones, both current and of course historical. I think the 70s was a really fantastic era, and I've mentioned before people like when I've toured with Elton John. He gave me my first leg up really on the touring circuit, but he has some phenomenal songs from David Bowie and Leonard Cohen, Cat Stevens, and then great bands, Fleetwood Mac and Steely Dan, Crosby, Stills and Nash.
70s. This is all mostly early to mid 70s. You're talking about.
Yeah, and it was a very genuine, honest time with songwriting. It was socially aware. They weren't singing about their kind of material objects on the whole. They were singing about the world around them and what it is to be alive and conscious. And those are the kind of subject matters that I relate to and connect with. And musically, I think it was about capturing a performance in that time. So I've really enjoyed listening to that. But yeah, everything along the way, I think, anything you hear, you can't help but you're influenced by. And probably as I write songs now, you can have an idea, and along the way, someone will come and say, "Doesn't that sound a bit like, that idea?" And so many songs have been written, and those influences, I'm sure, are all over the songs that I write.
Do you have periods when you're writing songs all the time? Do you have a structure to songwriting in terms of just the production?
I think I take a bit of time to write songs, and I kind of enjoy living with songs. I don't write hundreds of songs and then and throw them away, because I would like them all to mean something. And again, if it's for myself, it's when I'm inspired, when I feel strongly, then I will need to write something and need to capture it. So I take my time over it, and I live with a song or live with an idea for a bit of time.
You don't write, say, maybe 50 songs and then take 10 of the best. Then it wouldn't really work like that for whittling down, say, for an album.
I think that then becomes difficult for a record company, because they might want 50 songs to choose 10 for an album, but I can't give them 50 songs. I can then only say, look, I've had lots of ideas that have gone nowhere. These are the 10 or so that I've written that I want to record, and I did that basically for the first album. I think I had 14 songs at the ready, and for the second album again 14 songs, of which 10 are on the album, and the ones that aren't either got released as B-sides or I'll hold on to for a further album. But,
so everything gets released.
I'd want to record them and release them in some way.
I think this is quite an unusual approach. I think I may be completely wrong, but I think maybe what a lot of people do is they do finish songs and then feel that those songs don't go anywhere. It seems that what you do is maybe finish melodies or come up with lots of different ideas. And that's the stage in which they don't leave the factory floor, so to speak.
Yeah, I think that's probably the case, and I, I have a handful of songs that, again, they're not yet recorded in their best form because I don't feel they're quite finished, but they're still in the bank and waiting that refinement. However many years down the line that'll take.
How about Same Mistake? When was this written?
Same Mistake. I refer to Kosovo in it at times, so it was after that, and I think I was performing it pretty early on after I'd released Back to Bedlam, so it must have been sometime soon after that. In fact, I can't remember yet. So I'd written the album and recorded the album Back to Bedlam, and round about the initial tours, I started getting the idea for Same Mistake and putting that into play, and then took that to my band, and actually it was one of those songs that's very quickly realised it was a great song to perform. And for me, one of the ones I'm most excited to play live, actually. I think writing it, I was living in a pretty grotty flat on the Fulham Palace Road above a dry cleaners and had a pretty dodgy out-of-tune piano there. I was working with Paul, who's been playing piano today, and working up this touring band. And it was, yeah, it's an exciting song to play live, definitely. And
is it about Kosovo?
Not really. I think although I refer to that, it's really, it sort of speaks for itself. It's the fact that sometimes I can be my own worst enemy, that you can make mistakes and not learn from them, that a leopard doesn't change its spots, that it says, give me reason, but don't give me choice, because I'll just make the same mistake again. And so it's a song which obviously has a certain amount of guilt in it and a lot of self-reflection. It is one of those songs of total recognition of one's failings.